I've belonged to lots of writers' groups and I've been to lots of workshops over the years. And one of the things that almost all those groups and workshops have done is we've given peer review. We've given feedback on the work of the other people in the group. Now, feedback, that's an interesting word. I had an email from one of the women who'd been at one of those groups, and we'd all given her feedback. And she sent me the email a few days after the session, and she said, "I've made the corrections from the other night." And I sort of went, corrections? Because I thought we were just giving comments. I certainly didn't consider that the rest of us in the group were correcting what she had written. Years ago, I think one of the very first groups that I belonged to was an online group, and we'd post our poems, and they could be finished work or they could be works in progress. But if it was a work in progress that we wanted comments on, we've put in the subject line, the title of the poem, our initials, and then C&C, because we wanted comments and critique. We weren't asking for corrections, we were asking for opinions. And in most of the groups I've been to, I think that that's definitely the attitude, that you put your work in progress out there in front of the others, and they give their opinions. They give advice, but you don't have to follow it. They're not corrections. These are not editors who are going to publish your poem if you make the following corrections. Not like that. These are just opinions. It can actually be quite complicated if you're getting different opinions around a group, because some of the people there will be very experienced, others won't be so experienced. And we have a tendency to think, well, they've published here and there, and I ought to listen to what they're saying. Maybe we ought to listen to what they're saying. Whether we actually take that advice on board and use it to change the work that is under discussion is a different matter, because advice can be given, it doesn't need to be taken. It's also not just a question of how experienced the person who is commenting is, because some people are much better at writing than they are at critiquing. Other people are much better at noticing what's wrong with your work than actually putting that advice into practice in their own work. So you may not think much of what they're producing themselves, but they may have some very insightful comments, because quite frankly, it's easier to be objective about somebody else's work. It's much more difficult to pull your own piece apart, because it's still raw often. It's something that you've written. You know what you thought you'd said, you know what you wanted to say or to express. And it's only when you can be objective, as if it wasn't your own, that you can actually identify the flaws and find out what wasn't said. So it's definitely worth listening to other people, whether they're much more experienced or whether they're complete newbies. If they are readers, actually remember that when we're writing for readers. We're not writing for other poets necessarily. We're not writing for critics. We are trying to write something which will appeal to a reader. So if it's a reader who is giving you feedback, it's worth listening. But it doesn't mean you have to take that information and that advice and act on it immediately or at all. Or one thing that I've found with the advice that I've been given about my own poems is often I've heard what's being said. Maybe I think they've missed the point on this particular piece and I don't make any changes at all. But what I will do is store up that advice, store up those ideas, those thoughts about how I could have made it better, and apply them to the next piece or a piece further on down the line. They're not corrections, they're comments which can help us to write better in the future. So remember, if you're in a writing group and you get feedback, It isn't correction. It is simply opinion. Listen to it, say thank you, or they'll stop giving you any feedback, and that's no good. But then do with that advice what is appropriate for you.